Hello and welcome to the Ocean Impact Podcast Pitchfest 2020 series. I'm Nick Chiarelli, thanks for joining me. Late last year, OIO ran the Ocean Impact Pitchfest 2020. We were inundated with almost 200 applications from 38 countries and were blown away by the incredible breadth and quality of ideas and ventures that applied, all trying to make a positive impact on planet Ocean. Over the course of this Pitchfest 2020 series, we'll dive into the challenge and opportunity areas that each of the finalists are working on, find out about their unique solution, and discuss the key challenges and learnings they've encountered on their journey so far. We'll also discuss their why, their motivation for working towards a healthy ocean, what the road ahead looks like for them, and how you, the listener, might be able to support their journey. This week I'm talking to John Gradek, who's the CEO of US-based startup Waterways. John grew up in Kentucky, USA, where he became a graphic designer and started working in his dad's industrial foam business, designing logos for bodyboards that were being manufactured there. His connection to the ocean came through his annual family holiday to Florida, a place that is significantly impacted by toxic algae blooms, the very problem that Waterways is now working to solve. Waterways offer a circular economy solution to phosphorus and nitrogen pollution. Their flagship product is called Poseidon Pellets, which were developed in conjunction with the US EPA and are an insoluble pellet that absorb phosphorus and ammonia on contact, improving water quality and reducing toxic algae blooms. Once the pellets reach nutrient capacity, they can be used as fertilizer, returning the phosphorus to the land and reducing reliance on unsustainable sources of fertilizer. The primary markets for Waterways are currently farmers to address agricultural runoff and wastewater treatment plants. Phosphorus is among the world's most important chemical elements, and it benefits us in a staggering number of ways. Most phosphorus production is in concentrated phosphoric acids for agricultural fertilizers. But high levels of phosphorus from agricultural runoff causes algae to grow at a remarkable rate, which harms water quality and natural habitats, turning important water sources into algae-choked dead zones, a process called eutrophication. This has a range of environmental and economic impacts on our oceans. Agricultural runoff from farms is a major threat to the health of places like the Gulf of Mexico and Australia's Great Barrier Reef. I hope you enjoy this discussion with John Gradek on the Ocean Impact Podcast Pitchfest 2020 series.
Can't take the ocean out of me.
Good morning, John, and welcome to the Ocean Impact Podcast. How are you going?
Good. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. Thanks for joining us all the way from Kentucky, USA. Tell us a little bit about phosphorus, nitrogen, and ammonia. What are you guys at Waterways trying to do about these chemical elements?
So the problem we're trying to solve is nutrient pollution, namely phosphorus and ammonia. And you know, the problem's everywhere. It's in every creek, every stream, every tributary and river. And where's that all go? It goes to the ocean. And it takes oxygen out of the water. It consumes it through eutrophication. And, you know, they find phosphorus in coral skeletons, and it's all human-made. You know, it's our problem with our fertilizers that we put into the water that it's a huge nutrient pollution. So to help solve this issue, we developed Poseidon Pellets, pellets that are able to absorb phosphorus and ammonia on contact. And, you know, it's incredibly simple. You know, water just flows through the insoluble pellets, and it causes a chemical reaction. So the phosphorus and ammonia form struvite. And when the pellets reach capacity, the nutrients are returned to the land as a slow-release fertilizer. And so that enables us to serve a lot of different markets. And they're both non-point sources like farm runoff and livestock and waterways, and point sources like industrial and municipalities.
So let's stick with the farming and the agriculture example for the moment, John. What you're saying there is that we have an issue around the world where we have farmers situated along inland waterways using a variety of fertilizers to grow their crops. And when it rains and there's runoff from those crops, that gets into the inland waterways and results in those chemicals aggregating in areas and heading out to sea. And you talk about eutrophication there. Tell us a little bit about eutrophication. What does that mean?
So eutrophication is when these nutrients get into the water and literally choke it by taking all the oxygen out of the water. So not a single plant or animal can live. And in the United States, we have a huge area in the Gulf of Mexico, which is 100 miles wide, where nothing can live. That's down by New Orleans. But the same thing's happening with the Great Barrier Reef. I mean, it's not just the ocean's getting warmer. There's plenty of nutrient pollution they're finding in, coral skeletons and things like that.
These patches around the world, for those that don't know, have been named dead spots because literally no life can grow in them. They've had the oxygen has completely been taken out of these areas, and anything within these areas literally suffocates.
And so in the U.S., it's the nutrient runoff from farms is it's pretty much beyond regulations at this point because it's gotten so bad. But they are, they're looking to put in new regulations to hopefully curb those effects. But the problem is no one's equipped to fight them. The farmers don't have the technology. The wastewater plants don't have the funding. And, only the large ones can really afford the CapEx cost of putting in the infrastructure to try and take that out. The farmers have no idea what to do. And those drainage ditches are about, 4 or 5 farms combined. So whose fault is that nutrient pollution? Is it farmer 1 or is it farmer 4? They're all going to say it's the other guy. But with the Poseidon pellets, we can absorb those nutrients in the drainage ditch. It doesn't even have to reach the stream or the creek. We can get it right there, from weir to weir, where we literally take all the nutrients out of the water, and we can give those pellets back to the farmer in the form of, it's already in the form of a slow release fertilizer. So we can calculate the amount of time from the amount of runoff they get. And, at the end of 1 year, hopefully the pellets will be at nutrient capacity. We can calculate exactly when that time will be, given their nutrient loads.
Wow. So quite simply, Poseidon pellets I imagine they sit in some type of bag, Hessian bag, if you like, almost look like a sandbag, if you will.
Yeah, we put them in boom socks. They're literally long, almost polypropylene material netting. So when you pour water through that boom sock netting, the water doesn't even break up at all. It goes straight through that. And that's one of the things that helps these pellets stay contained, but let water just make full contact with them. The more contact the water has with the pellets, the better they're going to work. And then we also get into the equation of residency time. What's the flow rate that determines how long the water and the pellets have to interact for. And the third factor is just kind of the nutrient load. How much phosphorus is in that water determines how long it's going to sit in that water. And the flow rate, of course, is how fast that water's coming in. So there's 3 different factors.
So it's a circular solution. You absorb the runoff, and then when the pellets hit nutrient capacity, the farmers can throw those pellets back onto their crops in the form of fertilizers. And what you're saying there, John, if I'm not mistaken, is that you can almost calculate with a good degree of accuracy what you referred to as the capacity timing, or the timing that those pellets would actually be at capacity.
Yes, exactly.
And and I suppose that just comes down to the type of soil, the type of crops, the type of fertilizers being used.
Yeah, it comes down to just the concentration of phosphorus and nitrogen that is in the water. You can get yearly averages. Some months of the year are going to be higher than the others. But overall, for 12 months, there is a nutrient influent in the water. And you want to remove that and make the effluent below the fines and the limits that they have.
Sure. Tell us about the solution and how it applies to water treatment plants. So we've touched on agriculture. Does it differ, or is it the same type of application there?
So in larger wastewater treatment plants, they have a similar technology that they cost about $12.5 million in infrastructure, but they form literally the same chemical reaction we do. The only difference is we can do it with a pellet in a bag. So for the large treatment plants, they're going to have the money for that infrastructure. But for your small, decentralized communities, this is a fantastic solution because it's relatively, 100 times cheaper. We charge $19 a pound, whereas the large wastewater treatment plants are charging well over $10 to $15 million for their solution. And our solution actually pays the farmer back. They can now, instead of the pellets being recycled as toxic sludge, they actually have a worth now. So it's a waste to worth solution.
So let me just get that right. You're actually saving the farmer the disposal cost, and you're also saving them the cost of buying additional fertilizer.
Exactly.
Win. Bottom line, win twice. Environmental win.
Yeah, and the farmers love it too. It just makes them a little more socially responsible. There's not much they have to do, and they don't have to change the pellets for 12 months, for a year. That's one of the really good things about this technology. And, we sell them in sediment screens as well. That'll keep out the mud and the leaves and stuff in a drainage ditch, or say on the edge of a golf course or edge of pond. So we have designed it so the pellets will remain, pretty much intact and untouched from all the nasty stuff nature's going to throw at it.
Mm. You talk about the farmers loving them. Let's talk about that for a moment. From what I understand, you have customers and multiple pilot projects in 6 countries: the UK, Spain, South Africa, New Zealand, and the US. What is the primary motivation for your customers in these countries? Is it the fact that they love what you're doing? They want to embed great environmental principles into what they're doing, or is it more geared towards, okay, I need to get in line with individual country and state legislation?
I'd say it's the regulations coming in. A lot of these companies won't move until there's fines. So what they're trying to do now is either beat the regulation that's coming in or be prepared for it, or to lower the fines they're currently getting. So it is motivated, it's fiscally motivated. It's not that they want to do, everything for the love of doing good, which, it's a nice added benefit, but they're trying to relieve the fines or deal with the new regulations that are coming in that they're not prepared for.
Yeah, and that's an important lesson for a lot of startup founders working in the impact space. I mean, it's fantastic to have grand ambitions and good intentions and to really want to have impact. But quite often, and you're a great example, Water Warriors is a great example of where you can have the most impact, but particularly in the early days, you really need to focus on the customer problems being around profitability, cost reduction, customer increase, and regulatory compliance. And if you can do those things, and by doing those things, achieve impact, then you're really singing to you're singing from the hymn book that your prospective customers need to be hearing. So, John, let's take a step back for a moment. We've got a little bit of an idea of the problem and the customers in agriculture and wastewater that you're targeting. I'm interested in knowing a little bit about your story and the genesis, if you like, of Water Warriors and how it came to be that Water Warriors and yourself are targeting this issue.
Oh gosh, where do I start? I guess in the beginning, when I was growing up, my father had a company in Kentucky that made boogie boards or body boards, ever since I was 14, I was heavily involved with boogie boards and taking them to the ocean and trying them out, trying different designs. And that kind of, fermented my love for the ocean. And, I just became obsessed with it. And just seeing recently, the algae bloom outbreaks down in Florida at some of these beaches we used to surf on, there's dolphins dying now in the water, in the ocean. And when I was a kid, there were dolphins surfing in the ocean with you. It's traumatic how different the world is in 20 years. You wouldn't think that's a lot of time for that much damage to be done, but I mean, it is literally everywhere. Every summer, the news is filled with blooms here, blooms there. In the U.S., we have the Great Lakes states, which have the strictest regulations, and then Florida, and now all the other states in the U.S. are starting to fall in line with that. But it all started with the states that got the worst impact, that kind of the genesis of it. And now with climate change and the world warming a bit, we're seeing algae blooms pop up in regions that never had those issues. When you get those right conditions of the warm water and the nutrients in the water, it's inevitable that you're going to get them. So where it used to be regulated to just really warm areas, it's now, regulations are going in for New England for 12 months out of the year instead of just, the South for a few months. So it's becoming a more widespread problem. And, the farmers are looking for better fertilizers and better farming techniques. But until those are put in, you can't kind of prevent the issues that are happening right now. And so the one thing that we think is great about our technology is we don't remove an algae bloom from a pond. We prevent it from ever happening. We remove those nutrients and put them in the form of a fertilizer. Whereas, some of the other technologies out there, they'll try and sink the bloom so it goes to the bottom of the pond. They'll try and, push the problem downstream so it's not their problem anymore. Someone else has to deal with it. So I think ours is really unique, that we remove the nutrients from the water, and only the nutrients. We don't pick up anything else, just the phosphorus and ammonia.
So take us back to your bodyboarding story there, John. You were working, designing bodyboard logos, I believe.
Yeah. So my father's company in Lexington, Kentucky, was the biggest manufacturer of bodyboards in the world. So we manufactured everything from Easy Rider, Challenger, Mike Stewart boards to Ron John Surf Shop boards. We even made them for Gap at one point. And so that's just in the middle of Kentucky. Fate put me with some boogie boards, and boogie boards put me with art and design. And then I pursued that as a creative director, art director, for 18 years after that. And yeah, so
you're not a chemical engineer. You're a marketing design background. You're living in Kentucky, nowhere near the ocean. Plenty of waterways, but nowhere near the ocean. You're and I suppose your connection to the ocean started off by having a connection with bodyboards through your dad's factory. He's obviously contracted you to do some very cheap, I imagine, design work for him at the time, and then you would take the occasional family holiday down to Florida, and I suppose that's where your connection to the ocean manifested.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was just a kind of a story where it's a lot of fate. It's a lot of, things lining up that normally wouldn't line up. So from bodyboarding, I got into art and design. And for that, I made, car commercials for the last 18 years, hanging out of helicopters. And, after my dad passed away about 5 years ago, so I came back to Kentucky to, help my mom. And she was taking over my dad's company. And right now they're making, military packaging for munitions. And my idea is to use some of that foam for, environmental uses. So I call it foam as a force for change, which is, get away from that kind of stuff and get into, changing the world, like making up, right now, foam is looked at as a dinosaur, environmental dinosaur that's going to be around for another million years. But what if you could use that material to treat water? And so we make a biomedium made out of that foam. And now we're concentrating on the pellets as another nutrient removal. But it's all focused on nutrient removal. And it all started back in boogie boards.
I love it. So, I mean, here we are, be fair to say, not an engineer background, not connected to the ocean naturally, but really you were, I suppose, came across an opportunity by virtue of working in your parents' factory, and then were approached around the specific problem to do with runoff. And at some point, you've said to yourself, "This problem really aligns with me and the way that I see the world, and it's the type of thing that I would like to be working on." Even though I'm not the sort of typical fit for a chemical engineering company, but you know what? I'm going to sink my teeth into this and do it with some real gusto.
Yeah, one of the things in advertising was to always find a story a company could tell, like a doing good story. And it's like, why does that even have to exist when your company could be doing good and nothing else but good? It just got to a point where you're trying to make up these brand stories, saying P&G saved this many trees by not cutting down that many trees for their packaging. By making their packaging a little smaller doesn't mean they saved those trees. It just means they didn't kill them. And if you can start a company that's based off a purpose, it's so much better than trying to fit a purpose into a company. And I think, that's one reason why we came out and named our company Water Warriors instead of Aqua Fix Phosphorus or whatever hybrid names that every other water company in this business does. We wanted to make a point, we stand for something, and right now our line is how water should be treated, and it's amazing that nobody else in this business has used that simple line before, how water should be treated.
They're not starting with the purpose, are they? They're starting with the technology or the product and trying to sell the story, if you like, around that, which is quite dull.
Right.
Yeah,
it's not really natural to the brand either,
Yeah. I obviously talk to a lot of people like you, John, and you're not completely unique in the sense that a lot of founders are working on something where there's a big chunky problem and they're passionate about that problem, and they don't necessarily come from the type of background that you would expect. But what they tell me when I start talking to them is that because they do have this grand vision and this beautiful alignment with what they do every morning they wake up, they're completely not fearful at all about all of the things that are in front of them on their journey that they have no idea how to do today. They'll work it out because the alignment and the vision and what the end goal that their business is working for just makes it so that it's easy. I'll just figure that piece out. We'll work it out. I don't need to necessarily be from an engineering background. We'll put people around us that can provide that input.
That's exactly right. I mean, we work with so many scientists that at the end of the day, you have no idea what they were talking about. But when you whittle it down, it's such a purposeful mission, and that's what gets you up every day. In the 18 years I spent in advertising, we got up and we had fun every day, but we didn't really have a purpose, Like you get to make a car commercial, for a lot of money, but what's it mean at the end of the day? Is someone at Land Rover going to remember you? No. Like, is that commercial already outdated? Yeah. I mean, so it was more about having fun, and now it's more about doing something bigger than myself, and having even more fun doing it than I did in advertising, and you're right. There's the most stressful things right now they don't really have that much weight, there's always a solution. And I think just being a entrepreneur and a founder of Water Warriors, I would have done this so much earlier if I would have known how good it feels to do your own thing. It feels right, and we've had a mountain of failures up until now, and I mean a mountain. But with each one, you shift and you change. If you need to change directions, you change directions. But there's nothing written in stone. It's a very organic process, and that's one of the things that's so great about it. I don't know who I'm going to be talking to tomorrow. I mean, it is the steepest peaks and valleys that you've ever had in your life. It's like one day you're on top of the world, and the next day it's like, we've got nothing. We're failures. We're going to shut down. And then the next day it's like, how many Ferraris? And then the next day it's like, I can't even fit in a Ferrari. What the hell am I talking about? we're going under. I can't even afford a coffee. And and that's one of the parts of doing it, being self-funded. It's the peaks and valleys hit you, I think, even stronger, knowing that it's your dollars and your money that's going out the window if something's not working. Then you need to, change course as quickly as possible. Otherwise, if it was someone else's money we were dealing with, we'd sit at the fancy cappuccino machine and talk about it for a while.
So you've got what we call a clear North Star, and I would suggest that, during those downtimes, that's what pulls you through. Having that clear North Star means you are going to look over the edge of a cliff from time to time, and sometimes you're going to stumble off it. But you get up, you keep going because of this very, very, very clear North Star and purpose mission that you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so important, I think. You've got to have something that gets you through the hard days. And if you don't love what you're doing and love the mission that you're on, a huge piece of advice to people starting their own venture. If you don't have that, if you can't find a way to get out of bed on the hardest day, and there's going to be plenty of them, then maybe you should consider or reconsider the venture that you're about to get into, which obviously you don't have a problem with doing what Water Warriors is doing. Let's stick on that for a moment, John. And you mentioned some of the ups and downs. What are some of the challenges that make you proud that you've got through? What are some of the learnings? And by the same token, what are some of the achievements that you've achieved over the last 4 or 5 years?
I would say, one of the biggest challenges in the water business is acceptance. And we've been lucky enough or fortunate enough to be in a couple of the, I want to call them top water accelerators. And just by being in those, you are somewhat validated, not just your technology, but you as a company. And that'll lead to kind of more pilots, more interest from other kind of early adopters. And so we've been fortunate enough to get a lot of opportunities out of those things. And one of the hardest things is the biggest challenge is it's water. I mean, everybody will claim their water's different, it's everybody wants to test it with the composition of their water, which leads to kind of what I call the pilot trap. You could just make a business out of running pilots nonstop, and forget selling a product at the end of the day. Just sell pilots, because that's one of the biggest hurdles is, in this business, everybody's got a black box, right? So it's kind of hard to get past that stigma of saying, oh, we figured out this. Oh, we're just two guys sitting in Kentucky. That's kind of a big obstacle to overcome. But, I think by being in those programs, by launching the product the way we have and getting, sampling and testing in 6 countries now, I think that our next 12 to 24 months is going to be, about securing funding, for one example. If we're going to grow and if these pilots are successful in those other countries, we're going to need to have product ready immediately, And so one of the great things about being self-funded was, we built a certain valuation in this company up to this point. But from up to this point, we can't expand fast enough to meet demand. So that's one of the things we're going to look for in the next 12 to 24 months is funding. And mainly to increase production so we can scale up.
So let me just rehash that, John. So self-funded, bootstrapped to date, no external investment raised. Is that right?
Yeah, and I can get my wife to verify that. I think the daily question is, when is Water Warriors going to start making money?
Oh, you know what? I was gonna pick up on that comment you made earlier about the highs and the lows, and my wife has, basically I've been working in early stage ventures now for the best part of 15 years. There's been a variety of them, and so my wife has this sort of cute saying when I come home and it's been either a good or a bad day. She'll ask me, "Are we rich again or are we poor again?" Because so much of it's on paper, right? And it swings from day to day, and so I hear you there. So self-funded to date, in customers and pilots in those 6 countries that I mentioned earlier. That's some pretty decent traction in 4 or 5 years with no external funding. You're also doing around $500,000 worth of revenue for the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yep. And we're hoping now that with this new product, we just launched Poseidon in October, so we're hoping that's going to make a big impact just being a product we can sell. So we currently have about a revolving inventory. We're keeping up 2 container loads of produced pellets. So that's a pretty high cost revolving inventory. But with this product being kind of a reaction to the fines and limits being put in, we're finding a lot of our clients need that solution last month. They don't have the 3 to 4 months to stick around and wait for a solution to be ready. So we've invested a lot of our capital in just inventory for these pellets, so we can move on projects sooner than later.
Gotcha. And so you're seeking growth funding in 2021.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your plans to scale and to use that growth funding. What's your end game business model look like? Do you intend to handle sales yourself, or are you going down a distribution partner model, a country-based region model? What's the intent there?
So right now we're looking for the right partners around the world. It can be from engineering firms to investors to distributors, anyone with an idea who's going to help us take off. With that being said, we're talking to different engineering firms that service, different categories that are asking for an exclusivity, and different territories as well. So we have interest by category and by geography. So it's going to be interesting moving forward to see where those kind of net out. And then when you introduce distributors on top of that, are they within that model, or is that going to live outside of that? So I think we're early enough that we have a lot of choices, but those choices need to be made. Gotcha. And so our ears are wide open for kind of the best path that's going to give us a lot of growth. And
as you develop more pilot sites and have more conversations, that will probably naturally be teased out, as in that idea between, is it a geography distribution partner model, or is it a problem set distribution partner model?
Yeah.
But very firmly, you do have the idea that Water Warriors will be more of a technology development company looking to partner with strategic partners around the world in order to, get product Poseidon Pellets and any other new products in the water treatment game where they need to be.
Yeah, and right now we develop Poseidon through a CRADA agreement with the federal EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. And what that means, it's a cooperative research and development agreement with the EPA. And we have that for 3 years. So Poseidon is our first product we're rolling out, but we're already in works for, products for metals, products for nitrogen and nitrates. So we're already, innovating, but right now we're also trying to get the first product out the door. You can't innovate too much if you can't sell. So it's a matter of getting this product to take root and get some market share. But then, because of our relationship with the EPA, we've got 3 more years of R&D we can do at their labs using their scientists and their equipment. So if we want to run a pellet through an electron microscope, we've got that capability, which is fantastic. Because a lab right now consists of a room with a sink for us. But at the EPA, it's rigorous testing and retesting and more testing. And so that gives us a very solid ground for our intellectual property. And through that CRADA agreement, we actually have the patent under Water Warriors that the EPA has assigned the technology to us. So if that is ever challenged, you've got the EPA in your back pocket now. So
it's an enormous validation tick for you, isn't it? I mean, not only do you have the patent, but it's developed in conjunction with the US EPA.
Yeah,
doesn't get much better than that.
And their offices are only 80 miles north of us, right now. So we go up there quite a bit, and yeah.
That's great that you've got that relationship. That's a really strong point. Particularly in the early years, to be able to call on them for validation when you're having conversations. What have you seen any movement since we've moved into the Biden era at the EPA?
Not yet. I think everyone's expecting to. Trump was horrible for everybody and everything.
It's too early, isn't it? Let's, why don't I come back and ask you in 12 months' time?
Yeah, and Kentucky is one of those states here in the U.S. that is a coal mining state, right? Coal miner's daughter was Loretta Lynn, was out of Kentucky, a famous coal mining song and movie. But Trump. Release of restrictions on coal ash being put into waterways. And that is probably one of the most poisonous, arsenic-laden, just horrible things that you could do here. So it's they've got a lot of things to make up for, a lot of regulations to put back in place before they put new ones in, just to roll back all the damage he's done.
Just getting back to what it was like 4 years earlier, right? Rather than looking to improve.
And it did. Honestly, it opened an opportunity for us, because I don't know if we would have been able to work so closely with the EPA under a CRADA agreement as a startup without Trump defunding them. So it's horrible on one level, but an opportunity for us on another, that we were able to get in there and develop this technology, because their funding was minimized.
So you're saying if their funding was at the levels it was previously, they would have gone and done this by themselves?
Or they would have worked with a company that they could have claimed a royalty on, or some other method of receiving payment for the technology. Whereas right now it's like a garage sale.
Well, we certainly wish the new administration all of the best. There's a lot of work to do. Signs are positive to start with. Certainly, from an environmental point of view, I think there's a lot of cause for optimism post Trump. John, we're getting to the end of our conversation. Very, very quickly, how can people out there support what you're doing? Is there some way that people can get in touch or find out more information, whether they be interested customers, interested investors? How can people support you?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we're looking for the right partners. They can be an engineering firm, they can be a distributor, they can be a family fish farm. We're willing to listen and talk to anybody and everybody. We think we have a great product. We think we have a great mission. And, if anybody out there thinks they can help us or wants to talk to us further, they can find us at waterwarriorsinc.com.
Sure. And I might just throw out another one there as well. One of the countries that you're not in is Australia. So if there's, anyone in Australia, particularly in the agricultural field, that's interested in finding out more, get in touch with John, or you can contact me even, and I can put you in touch. Thanks very much for your time today, John. It's been really enjoyable speaking to you and teasing out a little bit more of the Water Warriors story, and look forward to seeing your progress into the future.
All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers.